There's this really cool roster that someone makes every single year that adds a bunch of historic teams. In fact, it's adding 60 historic teams from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s into NBA 2K23, and you can download it for PS5 on Next Generation. Yes, it's only for that console. I apologize. I didn't even make it, so why are you getting mad at me? Anyways, so that's what I'm gonna do in today's video. If you like that kind of content, please join the pack and subscribe. Let's get it, man. So, if you want to access this roster, you have to go down to features. You have to go to create a roster, pick NBA Modern Current, and then go to user created roster. And you're going to specifically search for online ID, capital P, Peregrino, 1978. It's going to be called the 60 New Historic Teams Volume 1, and that is what you're going to get. This roster is so cool. So, here's the thing. They have two teams of every single NBA team. So for example, the 76ers have the 2004 and 2005 76ers. But if you go all the way back to the all-time teams, they also have even more historic ones, like a Moses Malone one, a Dr. J one with the older version of Dr. J, which is actually super cool, Charles Barkley, and all that kind of stuff. So they have the two different 76ers, one from 05, one from 85, added into the game. Another cool example is the Chicago Bulls ones that had Scottie Pippen without Michael Jordan. Cool example, but I'm just gonna show off the newer, more like recent ones to you guys. It's cool because a lot of these teams are like forgotten. Like just because 2K only has specific teams, I feel like you forget about other historical all-time teams and players that had really good successful seasons. I think a great example is the Bucks. This is the 2001 Bucks that Ray Allen and Glenn Robinson were the best players. I disagree with some of the ratings here, but it's not my roster, so ignore it. But like Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, Tim Thomas, Michael Redd, Sam Cassell, this team made a conference finals and they had really cool purple jerseys. This is an awesome team that like how do you not have prime Ray Allen in 2K? You know what I mean? Now the Chicago Bulls team, I wouldn't say is popular, but it had the Tyson Chandler. By the way, I don't know what they did to Tyson Chandler in the historical. That looks terrible. I don't know who's in charge of 2K. Fix that. But this is a team that had Captain Kirk, Luol Deng. I mean, this team, Ben Gordon, who actually had like really good seasons. Like, this was a pretty popular team for a little bit. This is the Cavs team that had, a lot of players with Ilgauskas, Carlos Boozer, Ricky Davis. This is the actual Ricky Davis, Darius Miles. Another team that, LeBron has a ton of teams historically, like the one with Shaq, for example, that like are forgotten in NBA history. The 2002 Celtics, when Paul Pierce and Antoine Walker were both averaging like 20 a game. He still had Kenny Anderson on the team. This team probably is really fun for Celtics fans. Like maybe they were never really that good, but like historically they were fun at the time. The 2006 Clippers, when Elton Brand was in his prime, Chris Kaman was a all-star at the time. Corey Maggette was a bucket. Sam Cassell was on the team. Like again, like a bunch of talent. They were never really great, but they had a bunch of talent. You have the 04 Grizzlies. Pau Gasol, White Chocolate, Shane Battier, Mike Miller. In terms of just 2K wise, this is a really fun team, right? Then we have the Atlanta Hawks, the 2011 Atlanta Hawks. This one's low-key stacked. It had Josh Smith, who was crazy at the time and a super athletic player. Joe Johnson was averaging like 20 a game at least. Al Horford was young on the team, but good. Jamal Crawford, we know, is one of the funnest players to use. This team had Zaza Pachulia that was like, we're going to game 7. Like that Zaza. Game 7! Jeff Teague was on this team when he was younger. This team had a bunch of talent. The Miami Heat. This is the 2004 Miami Heat before Shaq came to the Heat. This is Dwayne Wade's prime. Well, entering prime. Eddie Jones, Lamar Odom was on this team. Caron Butler. Like obviously this team wasn't winning championships, but they were damn good. This is the Bobcats team, I believe, with Steven Jackson, Joe Wallace when they were in their primes. You also had Tyson Chandler. I think this is the Steven Jackson that was complaining to the Spurs that he wasn't like the #1 option and then became the #1 option on another team, right? They have Larry Hughes on this team, Raymond Felton's prime, which is wild to say. Yeah, this team had good players. This was like the best Bobcats season ever, I believe. We have the Utah Jazz from 2008. This is the Carlos Boozer and Darren Williams. This was like when Darren Williams was like maybe the best point guard in the NBA. Like they were like talking about it, I remember. And then AK-47 was on this team. Paul Millsap and Mehmet Okur was like a future all-star. Like, yeah, this team had a bunch of talent. Again, a forgotten team in 2K history or NBA history that's added right here in 2K. It's awesome. This 2000 Sacramento, like this is another Sacramento Kings team that they already kind of had, so this is just another one of them. But like it's Chris Webber, Vlade, who they finally updated, by the way. White Chocolate, Peja. They've had this team before. Nick Anderson. I didn't even know Nick Anderson was on one of these teams, but it's a good team. Now, I guess you couldn't find a lot of Knicks teams to add, like the 2004 Knicks when Starbury was the best player. Allen Houston was like leaving his prime. Kurt Thomas was on this team. Penny Hardaway was like injured as hell, but on this team. Tim Thomas. It had some Dikembe Mutombo was on this team. Vin Baker. Like, it had players. It was just never really good enough to do anything, right? Now, this Lakers team is so essential. The 2010 championship Lakers with Kobe's prime, Pau Gasol as the second option, Ron Artest, Lamar Odom, Andrew Bynum, Derek Fisher was on this team. How do you not have this team until now? This is a team that 2K should have had in 2K forever ago. Super good team to have in 2K. This is the Orlando Magic that went to the NBA Finals in 2009 with Dwight Howard, Rashard Lewis, Hedo, Jameer Nelson, JJ Redick. Another team that has to be in 2K. The fact that it wasn't in 2K until now by this roster is insanity. And the cool thing about it is, like, this is like equivalent to like using a roster right now or like a team right now in historic 2K, because all these players are updated to where it looks just like them and it doesn't feel off, and you can just change the jerseys, you know? So it's a really good roster. Now, this Dallas Mavericks team, correct me if I'm wrong, this was when they were the first seed, right? And like Dirk was a 98 overall. He was like an MVP this season. Steve Nash was on this team. Antoine Jameson was a bucket. Michael Finley was still good. Sean Bradley, Antoine Walker. This team was a Josh Howard team was stacked, and they lost. It was just crazy. Now, this Nets team was when Vince Carter and Richard Jefferson entered the team while Jason Kidd was still on it. This was like coming off of back-to-back finals appearances, and like they thought getting Vince Carter and Richard Jefferson was gonna like change everything, right? And you also have Cliff Robinson on this team. This is probably talent-wise a super fun team to use. Now, this Denver Nuggets team I don't know too much about, but this is the 2000 Denver Nuggets with Antonio McDyess, Nick Van Axel. Don't know much about them. I'll keep it real with you. This Indiana Pacers team. This is the 2005 Indiana Pacers. As you can see, very stacked with Jermaine O'Neal, Ron Artest when he was averaging like 25 for the first couple games. I think this is the Mouse and the Palace team. Reggie Miller. And Steven Jackson. There's a really cool like documentary. Reggie Miller states he was like, y'all kind of robbed me of like a potential finals appearance this year. Because, I mean, Jermaine O'Neal was in his prime. Ron Artest was looking like a bucket that year. Reggie Miller was still producing well. Like, Steven Jackson was good. Like, he complains that this year they should have been a championship level team. This Pelicans team, which was a New Orleans Hornets team with, you know, Chris Paul, David West, Tyson Chandler, Morris Peterson, Peja, was Chris Paul's like amazing like surprise season into the NBA and like showed off this team really well. This Detroit Pistons team is one of my favorite examples of the 1997 Detroit Pistons. Grant Hill's prime, right? Joe Dumars was still like good but not great anymore. Like, you don't think about Joe Dumars in a team like this in 2K until now with Aaron McKee, Grant Long, Theo Ratliff, like players that like matter and are forgotten when Grant Hill was in his prime. The 2007 Raptors was always such a cool team. With Chris Bosh was in his prime. You had Andrea Bargiani doing very well. Morris Peterson, Jose Calderon was a bucket, TJ Ford. You know, this team didn't win much, but like they had talent. They were fun. They're a fun team to use for sure. This Houston Rockets team is another team that's feeling it's gonna be forgotten about in history because there's other James Harden teams that were better, but this team was good. James Harden like leaves the Thunder and proves he's a bucket, right? Dwight Howard leaves the Lakers after bad blood and goes to the Rockets and produces again. Chandler Parsons was very good. Jeremy Lin leaves the Knicks and becomes a starter on another team and does well. Like Ronnie Brewer was on this team. I think they had, you know, Aaron Brooks, Pat Bev, an amazing team. And like, it's going to be forgotten unless 2K makes this or this guy makes this roster. It was such a good team. Another forgotten team, the San Antonio Spurs from 1995. David Robinson and Dennis Rodman's prime. Dennis Rodman was getting like 30 rebounds a game on this team. Sean Elliott was like an all-star at the time. Chuck Persons, Terry Cummings, Avery Johnson, Doc Rivers. This team was stacked. Didn't win anything, but they were stacked. And we don't have a David Robinson's prime team. This would be important to have, to me. For the Suns, we have the 1998 Suns. This team makes me laugh because they had Jason Kidd and Steve Nash at the same time, and Kevin Johnson. What a wild team. This is a 2016 Thunder. I believe this is the year that before KD left to the Warriors, where they lost to the Warriors. When KD, Russell Westbrook were both in their prime. Ibaka was in his prime. Steven Adams was still producing well when he was young. Deion Waiters was low-key playing like really well. Another just massively good team that like 2K is gonna forget. This Timberwolves team is honestly one of the best Timberwolves teams of all time. This is the first year they went to the playoffs in like a long time. It was Cat, Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins, Derrick Rose, who had dropped a 50 piece that year, Jamal Crawford, who was still kind of producing pretty well. Like, this team was really good, and they broke apart because Jimmy Butler was calling them soft, but like, it's gonna be a forgotten team that was so good. Now, this Blazers team, I didn't remember this much. I wish they added the Blazers team that lost to the Lakers that had Scottie Pippen, but this team of Rasheed Wallace, Sabonis, Isaiah Ryder was still a good enough team to have in 2K. Now, this Warriors team, I'm not a fan of him adding. The 2002 Warriors are kind of like a whatever team with Antoine Jameson, Gilbert Arenas, Larry Hughes, like, Jason Richardson's kind of a whatever team that I don't really care for. He added it, and I guess it's okay, but kind of a mid team. And the final team is the Michael Jordan Wizards, the 2002 year when he comes back to the NBA. They have the older Michael Jordan on this team. You have Rip Hamilton as a very young player. Christian Laettner. You had some players here. You could have added either Wizards team the season before this season, but at the end of the day, they add the old Michael Jordan, which is a team that we've begged for, right? This team wasn't very good, but it's still old Michael Jordan. Why not, right? Okay. Those are the teams. There's a lot of cool teams here, right? Like, I'm telling you. And then, like, you can look at I guess we can do another video if you guys want of like the other teams, like the early 80s and 90s teams. We can check those out as well if you guys want. But let me know in the comments below. If you like this channel, please give it a sub. I'll see you guys next time.